Hello, this is my great pleasure to introduce for the last keynote given by a PRAIRIE shareholder this morning, Cordelia Schmid. She is a research director at INRIA. IEEE fellow, she got an ERC Advanced grant. She won many prizes, like 3 times the Longa-Higgins Award for Fundamental Contribution in Computer Vision, the Conderic Award, the Humboldt Research Award, the INRIA and French Academy of Science Grand Prix, and this year, the Miller Award. She is also a member of the German National Academy of Sciences, Leopoldina, and she will talk us about computer vision and automatic understanding of the visual world. So Cordelia, I give you the floor.
Thank you, Isabelle, for the introduction. I'll talk today about automatic understanding of the visual world. Machine visual perception, the goal is to give the computer the artificial capacity to see and to understand the visual world. Given a sequence of images or an image, what the computer sees is grids of pixel values. Given these grids of pixel values, the computer has to understand the content and predict, for example, here on the right, that there are cars, cows, and the action drinking in the images and videos. If you look at the images on the right, it's very easy to predict and see what's going on there. However, if you look at the content on the left, it's very hard to get an idea what's going on. The computer has to bridge this gap. Today's machine visual perception heavily relies on machine learning, particularly on large scale and deep learning and learning with noisy labels. Another important component for today's visual machine perception is the data. There's a lot of manually annotated data sets around. However, this is cumbersome and tedious, and recent research looks into using synthetic and weakly supervised data. Finally, machine visual perception is also about designing vision-specific models and taking, for example, into account spatial and temporal models for video understanding. In this presentation, I give an overview of data sets and data used for training, and then present visual models for video understanding. There exist a number of data sets, manually annotated data sets. For example, the open image dataset has 50 million bounding boxes for 600 categories annotated on 1.9 million images. Another dataset, the AVA Atomic Visual Action dataset, has 80 atomic actions annotated in more than 300,000 movie clips with 1.6 action labels. While these datasets are large and allow to train machine learning approaches very well, there are several issues. First of all, it's expensive to do all this manual annotation. Moreover, there's a more serious issue in that the categories and the action categories are limited. Here we represent the world with 600 categories and 80 actions, which is clearly not representing the whole entire visual world. Furthermore, it's difficult to introduce new concepts. Every time there's a new concept, we have to annotate it from scratch. And then one more point is that there's some things which are difficult to annotate, such as 3D body shape. I'll start by presenting an approach for how to create synthetic data for human 3D body shapes. We've introduced the surreal dataset, which takes as input body shapes obtained by scanners, the 3D shapes, and 3D motion cap data, which captures the motion of a human in a sequence. We can then combine human body shapes and motion sequences and render these sequences under different viewing conditions, different light conditions, and with different clothings and from different backgrounds. We then have for the synthetic data, the 3D pose, the part segmentation, the depth, the normals, and the flow. Here we can see a few of these generated sequences. On the left, the generated sequence, in the middle, the ground truth segmentation, and on the left, the ground truth depth. We can now use this data to train, for example, here, the CNN. We take the synthetic data as input, train the CNN, and we can then test this model on real images and predict depth and segmentation, for example, without any annotations on real images. The approach we use here is a stacked hourglass with a sequence of up and down sampled convolutions, which outputs 15 channels corresponding to the body parts. Each pixel is then labeled by softmax for the most likely body part. If we evaluate our results on an existing dataset, the human 3.6 million dataset, we can see on the left the input data, the input image. In the next column, we can see results if our model is trained on real data, then if we train the model on synthetic data, and finally in the last column, training on synthetic and real data. We can see visually that training on synthetic and real data improves the performance. The table below measures this improvement using accuracy of the pixel labels. If we train on real data, we obtain an accuracy of 55%. If we train on synthetic data, we obtain roughly the same accuracy, which shows that we can actually use synthetic data alone for training such models. And now finally, if we combine real and synthetic data, we obtain a 10% gain in improvement. In conclusion, we have seen that we obtain significant gains when we learn the synthetic data. Synthetic data allows to model data which is difficult to annotate. Furthermore, it's a simple way to increase the quantity of the data. Open issues are how to make the synthetic data even more realistic. We've seen in our example that the human is not always moving smoothly, is not super well inserted in the environment. Another open issue is how to improve the sim to real transfer, how to go from the simulated data to the real data. And one approach which people are currently looking at is using GANs. Another open question is how to use real data to improve the simulation. For example, if you want to measure object properties, we can use the real data to measure the friction coefficients and inject them then in the simulator and obtain a better simulator. Another way of moving away from annotated data is wiki-supervised training. Here I present one of our recent approaches, the video BERT approach. The idea is to do wiki-supervised learning with multimodal supervision. We learn from video information and text, where the text is obtained from the video by automatic speech recognition. The approach is on the transformer model, which learns the correlation between features and speech. We learn from large-scale data, in particular cooking and instruction videos. Here we see an illustration of the video BERT model. On the left, we take its input text, as I said before, obtained by ASR from the video, and on the right, we take its input video features obtained by 3D convolutions for 1.5 seconds time intervals. Our approach is a multimodal transformer, which measures the correlation between text features and video features. We use a masked BERT modeling approach, as in the BERT model. And here you extend this to video features by doing tokenization of the video features with clustering. We train our model on 300,000 cooking videos. Cooking videos come in many cases speech describing the content of the cooking videos. For example, here, keep rolling tight and squeeze the air out to its side. The obtained model can then be used for zero-shot prediction on previously unseen test videos. On the right, we show two examples and the corresponding prediction, make and pizza. We can evaluate the performance of our model for zero-shot prediction quantitatively. The table on the left shows that the supervised approach and our video BERT model perform on par when trained on a large enough data set. Table on the right shows the impact of the training size. If we use more data for training our model, we can significantly improve the performance, and we see that the performance is not yet saturated. Next slide. In conclusion, we have seen that wiki-supervised learning exploits the large amount of data online available. You can just start from videos which are online available and use the speech and the visual information to co-train these models. It relies on the correlation between multiple modalities, here, for example, video and language. Open issues are how to scale up to general noisy data and how to balance the different data sources and objectives correctly. I'll now move to a second part of my talk, which is how to design visual models for video understanding. The goal of video understanding is to spatial temporally localize actions. We want to know when the video the person is drinking and at which moment in time. Or similarly, we want to know where the child is brushing his teeth and for how long. There are many potential applications. For example, in the context of self-driving cars, we want to know where the pedestrians are and what they are doing. Here, for example, on the left, you can see that the pedestrian is crossing the road and you would want to recognize this and the car has to stop. The example on the right shows view surveillance. Again, we want to detect the pedestrians and predict if they're doing any suspicious behavior. In the context of video, temporal context is very important. If you look at the example, we can see that from one frame alone, we cannot determine if the person is sitting down or standing up. However, if we have the full sequence of frames, we can see that on the top, the person is sitting down, and in the bottom, the person is standing up. A first model to take into account the temporal context is based on 3D convolutions. 3D convolutions are an extension of 2D convolutions where we measure how the image information evolves in space and time. Here we first extract region proposals with state-of-the-art networks and then characterize these region proposals with 3D convolutions to determine the action in the video. We've shown that this results in excellent results on the ABA dataset, which is a large-scale action dataset. More interestingly, if we look at the failure cases, we can see on the left a false reply for handshake. In reality, the person is reaching out the arm, and this is due to the fact that our model looks only at one person at a time and doesn't model interactions between people. Another example is a false answer for smoke in the middle. The person covers the hand, but there's no cigarette in the hand. In order to take into account the spatial and temporal evaluations of the actions, we first construct tuplets based on the apparent similarity of actors. Inside these action tuplets, we can then learn the sequence of small chunks of 3D convolutions, so how they evolve over time based on graph convolutions. We also design a graph which models the human-human and the human-object interactions. We then determine which humans and which objects are relevant for an action based on weak supervision and use soft assignment to integrate the features. You can look here at an example where the temporal dependency model improves the performance. The example on the left labels the action as sit down. This is the baseline. Now, if we add our temporal dependence learning, we can see that the action is correctly localized as falling down, as we take into account how the falling down by motion actually occurs. If you look at modeling spatial relations, on the left, you can see the result for the baseline, which is the action hold. And now, if we take into account also the fork, we can then predict correctly the action eat. Modeling spatial temporal relations is also very relevant for predicting behaviors of cars. Here, we also need to understand the dynamics of the scene and the other vehicles. To do so, we have introduced VectorNet, an approach in which maps and agents are vectorized. So in order to just take the gray value information as input, we extract the objects and their trajectories and then represent the object, the car, for example, by a set of vectors. We then encode the structure by a graph hierarchical network. graph hierarchical network first represents roped elements such as crossings, cars, car trajectories, and curves by a set of vectors. We then have these polyline subgraphs, which we connect by a fully connected global interaction graph, which allows to exchange information between the different elements of the scene. Our approach is trained in a supervised manner on a large number of sequences. For the self-driving car sequences, we actually have at any instance in time the prediction of the future. We use two complementary losses, the L1 loss for trajectory prediction and the map completion loss to understand better the structure of the environment. If we compare our approach to the state of the art, we can see that VectorNet outperforms the state of the art on the Argoverse test set for self-driving cars and behavior prediction. And we can see that we measure two errors, the distance error of the trajectory at 3 seconds ahead and the average distance. In both cases, we outperform the state of the art. In conclusion, we have obtained excellent results for action recognition and behavior prediction. We've shown that it's important that the model takes into account spatial and temporal relations. And open issues are to design better models and to generate more data for general actions. Another open issue, which is very important for self-driving cars, is how to predict the confidence for the future trajectories.